SABC staff members marched on Friday, the 20th of November, at the National Broadcasters headquarters to hand the board a memorandum of demands as the board is trying to push their retrenchment policy. The ANC Youth League, along with the Communications Workers Union, voiced their opinions about how management is moving in the direction of wanting to retrench 400 workers to ensure that the SABC stays afloat. Now, to unpack this story further, I'm joined now by Communications Workers Union Secretary General Aubrey Tshabalala. Aubrey, thank you so much for your time. Now, obviously, South Africa was gripped with scenes coming out of a very troubled SABC in recent days. You've handed a memorandum to the SABC management on Friday. They're expected to make a decision sometime next week around the retrenchments. What are you hoping that they will say next week?
Well, good afternoon to you and your viewers at Newzroom. Well, we have marched, we have handed over our memorandum. We are very clear about what is it that we want. I think we are yielding the results now because the management have written to us this morning that they want to meet us, giving us 3 days in terms of alternative. That's starting from Monday right up until Wednesday. However, in their response, they are saying that they want to look into the alternatives. One wonders why they did not look into the alternatives before the strike, but that is water under the bridge. We are discussing that matter now because, remember, our memorandum was not to talk about the alternatives in the first place, was to talk about the completely withdrawal of retrenchment letters that has been issued and abandon the structure. But we will discuss that and they will come up with an answer to that invitation.
Now, the retrenchments are part of what they're calling a restructuring strategy that they've been looking into for several years now. And we also know that for several years that there's been a perpetual crisis at the SABC, and at the center of that crisis, it would seem, is the high wage bill and obviously poor management. For you as the CWU, what would a perfect strategy from the SABC look like?
Well, firstly, the high wage bill, if you look at it, is above the bargaining unit. It's at the executive managers. Those who are actually retrenching are the ones who are earning high. That's why you have to retrench a massive number of people, which will ultimately cripple the production line and the content of SABC. That's why we stand opposed to that. And indeed, we have to look at the bloated management structure, where you have a GM only managing one person and so on and so forth. So when you approach this matter of turning around the public broadcaster, you have to look precisely on the comprehensive approach. There's things like your regulations that we have to look into, linked to the government. There's things of the stakeholder. You have to talk about the broadcasting grant. We know we have taken a resolution in 2007 in the ANC of the 60/40 public broadcaster grant. So it is not the workers that created these problems. And unfortunately, all the time, when the management messed up, when there's corruption and all of those things, you come back to us and ask, how do you want to see, take this thing forward? But the real reasons that SABC to where it is at the management. And of course, this management now is more than 3 years. They have not done anything in terms of turning things around. You come back to us workers who do almost everything to make SABC what it is today. These are award-winning people in terms of their programs. They are now on top of the value chain in terms of the viewership. What more do you expect workers to give? They've given the best.
Now, management can't be running the SABC alone, and we know that that has not been happening for several years now. We know that there is some form of communications with Labour, with unions, yourselves as an example. We also know that there is a board, and we've been hearing some very concerning issues emanating from the board. We've seen a very divided board in recent days coming out of this very issue of retrenchments. Now, as a union, have you been having these ongoing discussions with management? Because it would seem from the outside that there is this disconnect between unions, between employees at the SABC, board members, as well as management.
there's a huge disconnect. Our side, we have submitted documents to them. We have proposed numerous things since 2018. If you recall, 2018, this time around, we were discussing this matter of retrenchment. We stopped it. And we said there should be a skill audit, failed. They never engaged on the skills audit. Secondly, we engaged management. We spoke about us approaching the government to talk about this number of things. They failed. We approached the board. The board thought that perhaps they are hired and now. They didn't want to engage us, so that's why there are this disconnect. But what is important in the latest developments is the fact that there is now divisions in the board, which confirms our long-standing suspicions that this board is run by a few individuals, is not a collective move. Some of the board members now are alleging that they were not consulted on numerous part of things. They were not privy to the things that we submitted as a union to the executive, and therefore they are breaking ranks. But we are applauding those who are now coming out to tell the truth, exactly what is happening at the board. And that's why CW is saying the board has failed in its fiduciary duties to make the executive accountable and also to make sure that SABC remains the public broadcaster. Therefore, we have made a call to say SABC must be under administration. We must disband this board so that we can go forward.
Now, what does being under administration look for you? How will that help the SABC? How will it help the employees now, especially those whose jobs are on the line? What is the solution for you in terms of just having the SABC be completely overhauled?
Well, firstly, like we have said, the first point is that there should be retraction of retrenchment so that we don't talk about this issue going forward. Secondly, the administrator that will come in will have to look at the turnaround. So it's a person that will be given a time frame of 6 months or a year, not having an interest of staying at SABC, so that he can clean out SABC. If you recall, years back, there was these allegations of ghost employees existing at SABC, and we did not find a conclusion on that matter, even though we are still waiting. Skills audit is still pending. And of course, there's cries about people earning very high salaries that are very close to management, yet the hardworking people are not earning anything. So once those things has been done, that's why we're calling for administration. You have to root out all of those things so that you start on a clean slate. But it is critical and very important that SABC must not be looked as a commercial broadcasting or broadcasting corporation. It must be looked as a public broadcaster. Hence, it's important that the government grants keep on flowing, not the bailout, because the government grants can be proportional based on what you are broadcasting. You look at a number of other regionals or indigenous language radios in what they do in terms of the Department of Communication, Department of Health, and Department of Education in various areas of the country. You'll see the important and significant of those so-called unfunded mandates, where a number of our people, including the chiefs in certain areas and the king, rely on that. We're talking here about a public broadcaster that over 21 million people rely on it for education, for sports, entertainment, and most important, for the news.
All right, Communications Workers Union Secretary General Aubrey Tshabalala, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.